There's a kind of memory that hits you in the chest before it hits your brain. You're somewhere ordinary. Maybe you catch a whiff of something, or a song comes on in a grocery store, and suddenly you're not 50-something anymore. You're 12, and it's a Saturday morning, and the carpet is warm from the TV that's been running since 6 a.m., and nobody is watching you. Nobody is coming to watch you. That was just life. And if that sentence made you feel something, you're probably Gen X. Born roughly between 1965 and 1980, Gen X was handed a childhood so specific, so irrepeatable, that no other generation can quite wrap their heads around it. Younger generations romanticize it. Older ones don't fully recognize it. But you lived it. And what I want to do today is actually walk through 10 of those experiences, the ones that shaped you in ways you still haven't fully accounted for, because the psychology underneath all of this nostalgia is genuinely fascinating and maybe a little uncomfortable. Let's go. Number 1, the Saturday morning cartoon window. This wasn't streaming. This wasn't Netflix with its smug little next episode in 5 seconds countdown. Saturday morning cartoons ran from roughly 7 a.m. to noon, and then they were gone. The TV networks just stopped. And that scarcity did something to a kid's brain. It manufactured anticipation in a way that modern entertainment cannot replicate. You planned your week around it. You woke up before your parents. You ate cereal straight from the box in the dark. And by noon, your entertainment budget for the week was spent. That feeling of a window closing, Gen X knows it intimately. Number 2, memorizing phone numbers. Not just your home number, your best friend's, your grandmother's, maybe the number for the movie theater's recorded information line that you called just to hear what was showing, even when you knew you couldn't go. You held those numbers in your actual brain, the same brain that now cannot remember the Wi-Fi password you set yourself last week. There's a reason for that, and it has less to do with aging than with the fact that your phone now remembers everything so you don't have to. But back then, those numbers were yours. They were proof that people existed in your life in a concrete, committed way. Number 3, coming home to an empty house. Around 40% of Gen X kids came home from school with an empty house. Key around the neck, no adult, no plan. Divorce rates had more than doubled since the late 60s. Mothers were entering the workforce in huge numbers, and childcare infrastructure was basically non-existent. So kids just handled it, made dinner, watched their siblings, sat with their own loneliness until it stopped feeling like loneliness and started feeling like just a Thursday. Nobody designed this to build character, but that reflexive, almost eerie self-sufficiency that Gen Xers carry around, that's exactly where it came from.
Number 4, the milk carton faces. If you went to school in the late 1970s or 1980s, you ate breakfast next to a missing child. Their face, their last known age, and the word missing printed right there on the side of your morning milk carton. This was a real campaign that ran across the United States, started in 1984, and it was, looking back, an extraordinary thing to hand a child along with their cereal. There was no context given, no adult explaining the fear or putting it in proportion. You just absorbed it and moved on with your day. Gen X grew up with a background hum of ambient danger that nobody formally addressed, and yet somehow that quiet exposure to a world that was not always safe produced a generation that is conspicuously unbothered by discomfort.
Number 5, the lawn darts. I'll keep this one brief because honestly the image speaks for itself. Lawn darts, actual metal-tipped projectiles designed to be thrown across a yard toward a target by children, were a mainstream consumer product until 1988, when the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission finally banned them after thousands of injuries and several deaths, and Gen X kids played with them, in shorts, barefoot, with siblings, unsupervised. The fact that this generation survived its own toys is quite something. Number 6, Encyclopedia Britannica as Google. You needed to know something for school, out of curiosity, because you'd had an argument with your sibling and you were going to prove them wrong, and you had 2 options: go to the library or consult the encyclopedias on the shelf if your family had them. Those volumes, often sold door to door in sets, were the original search engine, except they were heavy and alphabetical, and sometimes outdated. And if the answer to your question lived in a volume your family didn't own, you were simply out of luck until Tuesday when the library opened. What that did, invisibly, was train a generation to sit with not knowing, to tolerate uncertainty, to accept that information had a cost in time and effort, and that the wait was just part of the process. Number 7. Recording songs off the radio. You heard a song you loved. Your only hope of owning it was sitting next to a tape deck with your finger on the record button, waiting, sometimes for hours, for the DJ to play it again. And when it finally came on, that electric half-second where you'd lunge for the button, you almost always caught the beginning mid-note, or you got the DJ's voice talking over the first line. Almost perfect. And you kept the tape anyway. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called effort justification, where we value things more when they cost us something to obtain. Every Gen Xer who made a mixtape by hand understands this on a cellular level, even if they'd never call it that. Number 8. The TV test pattern. Late at night, the television simply stopped. There were no more shows. The broadcast day ended, and what replaced it was a geometric pattern, a droning tone, and the understanding that the world was not available to you 24 hours a day. You went to sleep. The world went to sleep. There's something almost medicative about that now in retrospect, this enforced boundary between consuming and resting that current generations have never experienced and probably never will. Number 9. Atari and the imagination gap. The graphics were, and I say this with full affection, barely graphics. A rectangle was a person, a square was a car, a shifting blob of pixels was apparently a dragon, and yet something extraordinary happened in that imagination gap. Your brain filled in everything the screen couldn't provide. You narrated the world, you invented the stakes. The emotional investment was enormous precisely because you had to build the meaning yourself. This is related to what researchers call the reminiscence bump, a phenomenon in autobiographical memory where adults disproportionately recall and emotionally value experiences from their adolescence, roughly ages 10 to 20. For Gen X, those bump years were saturated with experiences that required active participation, not passive consumption, and the brain encoded them accordingly. Number 10. Being told you were fine. You fell off your bike. You were told to get back on. You had a hard day at school. You were handed dinner. You expressed something difficult, and the adult in the room looked mildly uncomfortable and changed the subject. And somehow, sometimes bitterly, you learned to keep moving. Gen X is often described as the most underparented generation in recent American history, and that framing usually lands as a criticism. But the people who grew up this way carry something that's hard to manufacture on purpose, the bone-deep certainty that they can handle things, that discomfort ends, that they've gotten through hard things before, and they can again. There's a reason this nostalgia feels personal even when it's collective. Psychologists have known for decades that the memories we carry from our formative years aren't just that, they are the architecture of our identity. And for Gen X, that was built in empty houses, on warm carpets, with a cassette tape queued up and a finger hovering over the record button, waiting for something worth keeping. You waited a lot, actually, and you got pretty good at it. If any of this made you feel seen and you want to understand your psychology better, if your sleep is off, your focus is scattered, your dopamine is shot from overstimulation, I've put a link in the description and pinned comment to a bundle of 20 guides and planners built around fixing exactly that. Sleep, focus, stress, dopamine reset, mind decluttering, a week at a time, structured enough to actually follow. I hope you check it out.